Welcome to the Rotary Club of Milwaukee's Thursday Snack Program. The Thursday Snack Program is a little bit different than our Tuesday program, just in that there's a little bit less to it. You'll find that we're less formal. There's no pledge of allegiance or invocation or club business. It'll last about 30 minutes, but of course you can still count on the really high quality programming that you're used to. Typically, we feature a member of Rotary or a Rotary-connected organization with ideas pertinent to how we're living today. Today, we're going to hear from Rotary friend Daniel Goldin, owner of Boswell Books. And when we come back after the holidays on January 7th, we'll welcome several of our Rotary Scholarship students. And I get to introduce Daniel today. Daniel, as I said, is the owner of Boswell Books. And even though he disputes this, I found a quote from the CEO of the American Booksellers Association that described him as one of the best booksellers in the country. And you know what? We have him right here in Milwaukee. So, I mean, how much better does it get than that? Those of us who have been in Milwaukee for a long time remember Schwartz Bookstore, and they closed in March of 2009. And then Daniel bought one of the stores, and then 3 days later opened the store on Downer Avenue. And you know what? I'm having trouble moving my little screen here. So here we go. And that most of us who frequent the bookstore know firsthand that Daniel has worked tremendously hard to become a valued resource to readers, booksellers, and authors alike. In fact, according to a Milwaukee Magazine article that I found, Daniel has been instrumental in helping launch the careers of best-selling authors and booksellers. He's even influenced other independent bookstores around the country. And I would say that Boswell Books is now a Milwaukee icon. It's always a busy time of year, and I'm sure the pandemic has created additional stresses in the book-selling world. And Daniel, we really appreciate that you made time to talk to us today. So Daniel, take it away.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure. Basically, I have a list of people that I'll do anything for, and one of them is Mary McCormick. So when she tells me to do it, I do it. So thank you for letting me speak to the Rotary Select, as we would say. I'm going to bring up my screen share, but I will say that I will talk a little about the complications, which I've already told most of you, of running the bookstore in the holiday season during COVID. But I will say I've already gotten a couple of pieces of good news today, working at home before I went in to help out on web orders. We have just basically almost booked Alexander McCall Smith for an event in January. We have a really cool program called Readings from Oconomowoc, where I work with Lisa Bedoin in Oconomowoc, and we interview people together. We just did Lily King of Writers and Lovers, and that'll be our January event. So, and also it's not public, and I can't exactly give any information, but a couple of my booksellers who wrote, self-published a book. This is actually of interest to at least one of our friends who is, so they self-published several books, and they might have gotten an offer from a major publisher to take it over. So I always tell self-published authors, it'll never happen. This doesn't happen. Or it could, I guess. So I'm going to bring up my terminal. Look, it's Boswell Book Company. So this is sort of our information with the most complicated set of browsing hours ever. We were actually 1 to 5 every day for a while, but we've tried to, I've finally convinced our most cautious booksellers, so I really want everybody on board. And we are expanding a little for the holidays. So Saturday and Sunday, we're open at noon, Monday through Wednesday, noon to 6. And then that last Thursday, when we're not taking any web orders, we're going to have browsing 10 to 5. It's still 10 people. Here's the thing about shopping in Boswell in this, not the way it normally is, even in COVID. We're way behind on web orders, like just about every independent bookstore in the country. We are not able to answer the phones most of the time. Many of our friends at other independent bookstores have shut off their phones. And we do have the 10 person browsing limit, so you will probably wait outside. So any way you shop with us, it's complicated. And that's why I am particularly grateful for everybody who shops, because I know that they're really making the effort. So,
hey, Daniel, could I jump in with a question? So
sure.
if we want to order a book to pick up, is it better to go online and order it then? Or is it better
I'm
to try
going
to
to say to you, while we don't know. Really, no, the best, honestly, the easiest thing for me is for you to come down and wait in line. That's the easiest thing for us. If you know, because all this business would be in the store, that is by far the easiest way. There's the same difference. It's actually more effort for us to take the phone, but you're going to get, if you can get through, you're going to be a little faster. We have another caveat. Whenever we're open for browsing, we only will take an order for 2 books at a time over the phone. Anything more than 2 has to come through our website. So you have to make the decision on what you want to do. Honestly, it's easier, in a way, it's easier for us for the orders to be web orders instead of phone orders, but the web orders take longer for you. So, that's all I can say.
Thank you. Okay.
Happy 2020, Mary. So,
we'll just bundle up.
So I am going to mention our first book because I don't have that many minutes involved. So I would say in a lot of ways, Hamlet is the independent bookstore book of the year. It's not #1 on the indie bestseller list. That would actually be Ready Player One by Ernie Klein. We actually did stupendously well on Ready Player One, but we really haven't found a good review of Ready Player Two yet. So that's sort of the power of the movies, to just say we saw the movie, so we're going to buy the sequel anyway. We don't do our customers are we're selling it just fine, but our customers tend to be a little more cautious about just jumping into something because they saw a good movie. Hamlet is the kind of old-fashioned book that we would be selling like crazy 20 years ago. It is, first of all, it is Shakespeare. And so they used to say that the most popular book would be Lincoln's Doctor's Dog, because it was like in the late 18, much of the first half of the 20th century, those would be the 3 topics that would be most popular. Now I would say it would be Shakespeare and Jane Austen Go to Paris. So I don't have Paris or Jane Austen in this one. This is a book about what it might have been like for Shakespeare's family during the plague. In particular, Shakespeare's son died of the Black Plague, and his son was named Hamlet, and 4 years later he wrote Hamlet, but the Black Plague doesn't appear in any of the plays. So Maggie O'Farrell, an award-winning writer, she won the Women's Book Prize, actually imagines what it was like, especially for his wife and children, because Shakespeare's actually a background character. This book's selling like crazy, but I checked our orders and we're still not quite out of it if I accommodate the orders. Beautifully written. Geraldine Brooks reviewed it for the New York Times. That's a good comparison. Or all those people who read the Hilary Mantel trilogy, this is the book for them. It's the book of the year at the British equivalent of Barnes and Noble. And Mary Louise Kelly said her book club decided that for the next year, they were just going to read Hamlet over and over again. She said that on NPR. Let's see, this way. Vanishing Half, we were just talking about this book. I would say in the conflict, like where you look at independent bookstores and chain bookstores, this might be the book, the literary commercial crossover that is the most successful this year. And it might be the Where the Crawdads Sing for next year. Like I feel like the sales could keep going on this. Vanishing Half is the second novel from Britt Bennett, following the mothers. It's about the town in the South where it's mostly Black people living there, but they're very colorist. They have a prejudice against darker skinned people. And so these 2 girls are from a very light-skinned family, which is favored. One of them, they run away from home because because their mother asked them to leave school to help with their business. One of them passes for white, and the other marries the darkest man she can find, divorces him, and brings home the child. The story is about the sisters, but more than that, it's about their 2 daughters. I like to say it's as if Jodi Picoult won the Pulitzer, because it's got that sort of issue. It's got a commercial, plot that kind of moves you along, but it's got the writing quality and the critical raves, top 10 for the year, in many publications that could win it a big prize. I don't know, 5 or 6 people in my store read it. They all loved it. We're selling it like crazy, but we're not out. Here's
I started it a couple of nights ago, and I think it's amazing. I just, it's one of those books where it's just a pleasure to read the words. It's so well written.
That's right. That's the thing, is the language is good, but the plot keeps you going. So it's a rare thing. Coyotes of Carthage is my baby. I would say I always have a book which I decide is my favorite book of the year. I haven't figured out what that is yet, because I read so many good books, but this is the adult book that is not really working in the wider world that well. So I did just notice it just sold out everywhere at Ingram. But it's a joy for me. So as you can see, it's got a great John Grisham quote. So it feels like it has the movement of a thriller, but we were also just talking about John le Carré, and I feel like it's got a le Carré in the quality of the language and the fact that the story is very internal. It's about a Black political operative who works to kind of move the needle on elections. He's had a lot of problems. His brother is dying of a disease. His girlfriend has left him. He's an ex-con, and he's having a lot of trouble in his job. And this is basically his last chance to stay. His mentors basically said, if you blow this one, you're out. She sends him into South Carolina to throw an election so that they can get the mining rights open for a nearby mountain. He is a Black man going to a very conservative white town, so he is not going to be able to get what he needs to get done. So he hires some boots on the ground, an evangelical Christian couple who have their own ideas about what they should be doing. I thought it was terrific. It's just a really great thriller, but but also funny. The publisher's going to try to go for a more satire-like cover for the paperback. So we'll see how that goes. The author teaches at UW-Madison's creative writing program and the law school, and he actually is the co-director of the Wisconsin Innocence Project, which is really cool. I was going to mention a few picture books, and this is called The Oboe Goes Boom, Boom, Boom. The reason I mention it is actually I only have one picture book, but I thought this was an interesting trend. For a number of years, publishers were asking a lot of traditional picture book writers to cut the number of words in their books. Barbara Josie had talked to me about this, that they felt that the age level for picture books was going down, that kids were moving towards early readers faster, and so they thought that the writing should be simpler. And you're still seeing that. Kevin Hengus's Sunflower Lion, he's so great at writing for the youngest kids, is a good example of that. But we're seeing more of what Oboe Goes Boom, Boom, Boom is, which is, this is the story about a conductor introducing instruments to his band, his student band, and each kid plays an instrument, but whenever the kid's supposed to play the instrument, the little girl who is the drum player interrupts with her big boom, boom, boom. It's a great read aloud. I love this book because I actually learned how all these instruments work, and I played in a band for like 6 years. And so what this trend has reversed the simple thing. As you can see, this is not a low word count. The main plot line has a low word count, but there are all these asides. I call these busy, busy picture books because they are busy. They have a lot of nonfiction elements, and they remind me of Richard Scarry in a way, the way he would have those sort of nonfiction elements in the story. The other cool thing is that every kid actually represents a famous musician. The flute player is Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. And there's also a surprise as to who the conductor is too. This is my favorite, it's not my favorite middle grade book. It's tied for my favorite middle grade book with a book by Christine Kendall called The True Definition of Neva Bean, but it is the book that I'm selling. We're all selling like crazy. We love this book so much. Amy Timberlake actually is a Newbery honor for One Came Home. She's from Wisconsin, but this is a very different book. It is, her idea was she was going to write a book like Winnie the Pooh. And she came up with Skunk and Badger, Badger lives alone in a townhouse where he does very important rock work, as you can see at the right. He doesn't have a lot of friends. He's very organized, but he's a bit of a hoarder. So when Skunk comes, invited by the person who owns the townhouse, he said, there's no room for you because all the rooms are filled with my rocks, or maybe some boxes for rocks or bags for rocks. But Skunk stays. They get along and they don't get along. Skunk is a very good cook. He's very messy. And also, Skunk has a lot of friends, all of them being chickens. So it's going to be 3 books altogether, but this is totally self-contained. Not only can I compare it to Winnie the Pooh, but Frog and Toad is a good comparison. And a lot of people compare the book to an Odd Couple. This is one of my favorite books for nonfiction. It's doing pretty well. It's doing spectacularly well for us, but it's doing pretty well in the country. I believe also I started noticing it selling out. This is my Eric Larson-like book for the year. It has a lot of local color though. So this is about James Stang, who is kind of a flim-flam artist, as was his family. His father did a lot of scamming, building the canals of the Midwest. He wound up in the area and discovered religion and decided he was the second coming of Joseph Smith and picked off some of Brigham Young's followers. I hope I got that order right. They actually put their headquarters in Burlington, Wisconsin, southwest of Milwaukee, and then settled on Beaver Island off of Charlevoix, where they created a kingdom in Lake Michigan, where they did some consecration, some counterfeiting, a number of other things. All the while, he was in the Michigan State Legislature, but I think it was a ballot box stuffing. The book is so interesting. There's so many interesting stories. He's a guy who's larger than life, who really was famous in the 1850s, but has obviously become more of a footnote now. You'll see so many parallels to today, from religious awakenings to reinventions, to the way that the newspapers were social media of the day. The problems we had now, we had then. Super enjoyable book. He wrote a book called Island of Lost Maps that some of you may have read. We've obviously done much better than this one since we weren't open. This is a book that's also become dear to my heart. It's so easy to sell, and I really enjoyed it. About 20 years ago, I read a crossword puzzle book narrative that I enjoyed. I had a little more trouble moving the needle back then. I didn't like the guy who wrote it. So because this is a micro-history that's like part memoir and part kind of subculture. So what this woman does, and I really liked her a lot, is she looks at the history of the crossword puzzle and the 1920s phenomenon that it was, to the way that's changed, the way technology has changed it. She does a crossword puzzle competition. She does a Will Shortz piece. She talks about the differences between British crossword puzzles and American crossword puzzles. She looks at the way definitions have changed, how Will Shortz changed definitions. If you know someone who does puzzles, they'll like this book. I will tell you, if they're hyper obsessive about it, they'll know everything and they'll send her an email with like, here's the 7 errors that were in this book. So, but if they're a casual puzzler, I thought it was super enjoyable. We've been doing very well. Adrian Raffel. She wrote this as her academic like PhD treatise, and she took out how the concept of crossword puzzle poetry, which doesn't mean that it's in the form of poetry of a crossword puzzle. It's a bit of a slur, shall I say. This is a nonfiction book that I read sort of accidentally. I didn't really push that much of the time because I'm like, it's an Oprah book club, whatever. But I loved it. It was for folks who liked Mortal Life of Henrietta Lacks or Brain on Fire. This is the book for you. It's about family who settle in Colorado Springs at the Air Force Academy, and they have 10 boys, and 6 of them develop schizophrenia, and all of them manifest it in different ways. And the 7th kid, you might have thought would have gotten it, but he doesn't get it. And it's a spectacular story of family. If you like the Loud Family from PBS 50 years ago, why do I mention that? I don't know. But there's psychology, there's mental health, There's an interesting family story. The father is a larger-than-life character for what it's worth, as is the mother. And I don't know. It's just a terrific story. The real serious nonfiction that is you can't put down. Top 10 of the year, New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal. Here's my gift book that I'm recommending to you, The 99% Invisible City. This is something I love, urban planning books. It comes from a podcast, and this whole trend of books coming from podcasts and video blogs and that kind of thing. They're crazy big, but what I find is sometimes they have trouble removing themselves from their origins, and they read a little chatty like the podcast is. This is not like that at all. This is basically 300 pages of really interesting things about the design of cities. And it's a bathroom book because it's got lots of short pieces, and I don't read bathroom books like that. I read them cover to cover. And I can't stop. I started a little late. They didn't give us advanced copies or anything. I thought, oh, I don't know. So you learn about the Jersey barrier, about the different ways of making left turns, about manhole covers and why they're round and what different cities do with them. Who invented the lane separator? It's great. And if you go to, someday, if you go to a lot of virtual parties, you'll always have something. So this is my last book. Last book, ExLibris by Michiko Kakutani. How can I be a bookseller and not talk about a book about books? So this turned out to just show up on Oprah's favorite things. Michiko Kakutani was a longtime critic for the New York Times, and I hated her because she was so mean for the book she didn't like. She'd sometimes like books that I liked, and I'd love the essay, but I couldn't get away from that fact that she would just be brutal if she didn't like something. But what do you know? When she likes every book in the book, she's a delight. So she talks about books that have been meaningful for her, from The Invisible Man to Moby Dick to a number of contemporary novels, to authors that have been meaningful to her. David Finkel's books about veterans, for example, and then some categories like books about 9/11, books about the Iraq War. Half the books have these fake covers in them, which are often better than the real covers. So it's a nice, very nice package. It does have this trend, like my last gift book. The big trend is to have jacketless hardcovers. And let me just say, don't drop them. They really break fast. So those book jackets are designed to protect a book. And in retrospect, they really work. So that's about it.